Hi, and welcome. This pre-application information session is for the OVW fiscal year 2022 Tribal Sexual Assault Services Program. This solicitation was posted on February 25th on grants.gov and February 26th on the OVW website. It's recommended that you have the solicitation with you as you view this pre-application information session. So, some general information. The most important thing that you're going to want to do before applying is to read the solicitation in its entirety. You can find the solicitation along with other valuable resources on OVW's webpage. This year, application submissions are done through a two-step process. Applicants will submit two documents, the SF424 and the SFLLL in grants.gov, and then submit the full application in the Just Grants system. It's also referred to as Just Grants. Applicants must submit the SF424 and SFLLL in grants.gov by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesday, April 19. And then the full application package is due in Just Grants by 9 p.m. Eastern on Thursday, April 21st. We suggest that you watch the application submission training video and download the application submission job aid from the Just Grants website to familiarize yourself with the application process. Additionally, the Department of Justice is hosting several application mechanics submitting and application trainings, and you'll be able to find and register for both the submission training video and live trainings on Just Grants via the link which is shared on the screen. Okay, so a little bit about the OVW Tribal Sexual Assault Services Program. It was created as part of the Violence Against Women and Department of Justice Reauthorization Act of 2005, or VAWA 2005. It's part of a larger program, the Sexual Assault Services Program, but it is the first source of federal funding dedicated solely to sexual assault direct services. Under the Tribal Sexual Assault Services Program, or TSASP, there are no certifications and no matching funds. And then about 35 tribes and nonprofit tribal organizations are currently funded under TSASP. Okay, the purpose area. So admittedly, the OVW Tribal Sexual Assault Services Program is narrow. TSASP, it has one purpose area on which proposals must focus. So let's look at that. Funds under this program must be used to support the establishment, maintenance, and expansion of programs and projects within Indian country and Alaska Native villages to provide intervention and related assistance to those victimized by sexual assault. So note that while OVW programs focus on the 5 crimes, domestic violence, dating violence, sexual assault, stalking, and sex trafficking, this program focuses on sexual assault. So the statute defines what intervention and related assistance includes, and let's go through them. So again, pursuant to the statute, funds under this program must be used to support the establishment, maintenance, and expansion of programs and projects within Indian country and Alaska Native villages to provide intervention and related assistance to those victimized by sexual assault. So per the statute, intervention and related assistance includes a 24-hour hotline services providing crisis intervention services and referral. It includes accompaniment and advocacy through medical, criminal justice, and support systems, including medical facilities, the police, and court proceedings. It includes crisis intervention, and that is short-term individual and group support services and comprehensive service. So this includes things like individual and group therapy, holistic support services, as well as coordination to services that may be needed, such as housing. Intervention and related assistance includes information and referral to assist the sexual assault victim and family or household members. It includes community based, culturally specific services and support mechanisms, including outreach activities for underserved communities. And then lastly, it includes the development and distribution of materials on issues related to the services described in 1 through 5. It's important to remember that direct victim services to survivors of sexual violence and their non-offending uh, family household members, that is who is focused on, not the perpetrators. Also, per the statute, work under TSASP is not restricted by gender or age or when the sexual assault happened. Thus, applicants can provide services for women, girls, boys, men, adults, youth, seniors. They all are eligible under TSASP. This year, OVW is interested in supporting the following priority area. So applications proposing activities in this area will be given special consideration. So this year, the priority area is improving outreach, services, and support for survivors of sexual assault from underserved communities, particularly LGBTQ, Two-Spirit, and immigrant communities. So some examples of activities that can address this priority include proposing to provide services tailored to the needs of the underserved population, or perhaps expanding referrals for services to community-based organizations that served a particular underserved community. So a little bit more on the activities under TSASP. OVW does not fund activities that jeopardize victim safety, that deter or prevent physical or emotional healing for victims, or that allow offenders to escape responsibility for their actions. Applications that propose any such activities may receive a deduction in points during the review process and may be eliminated from consideration entirely. Information on activities that compromise victim safety and recovery or that undermine offender accountability may be found in the Solicitation Companion Guide. So please take the time to review the full list in the Solicitation Companion Guide on the OVW website so that you are not including any of these activities in your proposal or project, should it be funding. And then pertaining to TSASP, this is the list of out-of-scope activities. So please also review this list carefully. This list includes activities focused on prevention efforts and public education, which would be bystander intervention, social norm campaigns, and presentations on healthy relationships. Those are out of scope for TSASP. Also, criminal justice related projects like law enforcement, prosecution, courts, and forensic interviews are out of scope. Providing domestic violence or dating violence victim services unrelated to intimate partner sexual violence, out of scope. Sexual assault forensic medical examiner programs and sexual assault response team coordination, also out of scope. And then finally, it's out of scope to provide training to allied professionals and the community, such as law enforcement, child protective services, prosecution, or other community-based organizations or tribal agencies. So again, in your applications, applicants that propose activities that are deemed out of scope may receive a deduction in points during the review process or may be eliminated from consideration entirely. Okay, project types. So this year under TSASP, applicants may propose to implement either a standard project or an improving trouble responses to sexual assault ITRSA capacity building project. Under the standard project, applicants must propose activities that fall under the TSASP statutory purpose areas. If an applicant wants to apply under the improving tribal responses to sexual assault ITRSA capacity building project, applicants must do two things. They will engage in a comprehensive assessment process that identifies the strengths and gaps of their community's responses to sexual assault. And following the assessment, a customized project implementation plan will be developed in consultation with an OVW designated technical assistance provider. So, as you're thinking through, am I applying for a standard or ITRSA capacity building project? Keep in mind that the ITRSA capacity building projects are intended for applicants that have never received or not recently received an award under the TSAS program. And note that OVW retains discretion to move standard projects into the ITRSA category or vice versa. Okay, so let's look at a little bit about the federal award information. So just quickly, all awards under the TSAS program will be made as grants, and there is no match required. OVW has the discretion to award grants for greater or lesser amounts than requested, and to negotiate the scope of work and budget with applicants prior to awarding a grant. Also, OVW has the discretion to make awards for greater or lesser lengths of time and will negotiate any project activity modifications that are needed as a result of changes to the estimated award period if necessary. Note that, as I mentioned before, there are two types of awards, the standard projects, and those can be funded up to $500,000. And the improving tribal responses to sexual assault, the ITRSA capacity building projects, which will be funded up to $525,000. This year, OVW estimates that it will make about 8 awards for an estimated total of $4.1 million. So you may be thinking, who is eligible under TSASP? Okay. Eligibility under this program is limited to the following: tribal governments, tribal consortiums, tribal organizations, and nonprofit tribal organizations. All of these groups are eligible with programs and activities in Indian country and Alaska Native villages. And this means activities for tribes that are done on tribal lands. It excludes programming for tribal people in urban areas off of tribal lands. That's an important distinction. Also, keep in mind for eligibility, if you're a current grantee and you have more than 50% of your funds remaining in your current award as of March 31st, you might not be considered for funding. Or if you receive funding, you may receive a reduced award if you actually are selected for funding. So there are some program requirements under TSASP after the award is received. And this includes, first of all, any applicants, successful applicants, will have to participate in OVW-sponsored training and technical assistance. Secondly, all applicants will be required to participate in any OVW program assessment or evaluation. Third, there is an option, there's a 5-year funding option. And if this is something an applicant wants to participate in, they will be required in the future to participate in a mandatory project implementation workshop that will take place sometime during the initial 36-month award period. And then lastly, and this is so key, as part of the program, grant awardees are required to A, provide core sexual assault services under the award. And again, this includes what we discussed before, those program requirements of crisis intervention, advocacy and accompaniment, information and referral, counseling, support groups, and support for those collaterally affected by the victimization of a sexual assault, including the victim's non-offending family or household members. And then also under TSASP, it's required that services for survivors of sexual assault perpetrated by services be provided for services of sexual assault perpetrated by persons other than intimate partners, right? So this again includes the broad range of survivors and the broad range of victims. So it could be victims of sex trafficking who've also experienced sexual assault, adults abused as children, male survivors, children and youth, and adults, again, sexually assaulted by a non-intimate partner, such as a stranger, a neighbor, a family, or a coworker. All right, so application contents. So it is the responsibility of the applicant to ensure that a complete application is submitted by the deadline. Applicants should anticipate that failure to submit an application that contains all of the application components will negatively affect the review of the application and may result in the application not being considered for funding. OVW may not contact applicants for missing items. So again, it's important to get all those items in. Now, in this system, some application documents will be automatically generated as a web-based form during the online application processes. Those documents appear on this slide in blue. The documents that appear in purple are pre-populated web-based forms that utilize data previously entered by the applicant, probably in the grants.gov system. And then prior to submitting the application, you should review all of the data for accuracy. The documents on this slide in orange are prepared by you outside of these online systems and then uploaded to the application in Just Grants as an attachment. It can be complicated. So in the next few slides, we're going to walk through the application components in the order they appear in the TSASP solicitation. Okay. So when you apply, the first step will be in grants.gov. This is where you will complete the web-based SF424 and the disclosure of lobbying activities, which is also known as that SFLLL form. Both forms are generated when the application is initiated. Okay? And just a couple of key points for these. First, the amount that you're going to enter in the estimated funding box should match the amount of federal funding requested in the budget section of the application later on. They need to match. Also, when you are identifying the authorized representative, this person must be an individual that has the authority to accept grant awards on behalf of the tribe. Some tribes' laws or policies limit this authority to only the highest elected official of the governing body or tribe, while other tribes have this authority vested in a staff position, such as the chief financial officer or grant writer. Just make sure whoever you put as the authorized representative has the legal authority under your tribal organizational structure to accept the award if one is made. So then the grants.gov SF424 and the SFLLL must be submitted no later than Tuesday, April 19, at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. To be clear, there will be a submit button in grants.gov for these two web-based forms that you must select to initiate the application in Just Grants. You must hit that submit button. And then after submitting the two forms in grants.gov, you'll receive an email notification to complete the rest of the application over in Just Grants. The communication between grants.gov, Just Grants, and you, the applicant, it's not immediate. It can take up to 24 hours or more for grants.gov to communicate to Just Grants. So applicants should not expect an immediate email. If you are a new user to Just Grants, the email will include instructions on how to register with Just Grants. And then to continue with the application process, you will follow the instructions in the email and log into Just Grants. The Just Grants 424 and General Agency Information web forms will then be pre-populated based on the information you entered in grants.gov. And you will need to confirm that the information that transferred over from grants.gov to Just Grants is accurate prior to proceeding through the remainder of the application. So in your application preparation, some general tips. So before we get to the meat of the actual application, of the proposal and the application submission in Just Grants, I want to share with you some things. So one, Just Grants only accepts 3 formats: Microsoft Word, PDF, or a text document format. So please limit your forms and your submissions to these documents and these formats. Also, when you can, use the sample templates and forms that we provide you, and it'll make the job so much easier. You can find sample templates for the current and pending OVW projects, current and pending non-OVW federal grants to do the same or similar work, and the letter of non-supplanting, as well as the confidentiality acknowledgement form on the OVW website. And you can find them by selecting how to apply and then resources for applicants. Next, a great tip: when writing your narrative, use the headings and the subheadings that correspond to the sections of the narrative as outlined in the solicitation. And don't forget to include page numbers on each page of the narrative. Another tip: please do not combine multiple application components into one file. As an example, you wouldn't combine the narrative with your document demonstrating authority to apply, the current and pending application tables, and the job descriptions all into one attachment, because they will be uploaded into different sections in the Just Grant application process. Also, you're very much going to pay attention to the technical requirements that are on page 10 of the solicitation. And note that failure to following those technical requirements can result in points being deducted from your application score and could be the difference between you receiving funding or not. Note also that any tables or charts that you submit, they are not subject to the double-spaced rule, but the font size should be legible. Yeah, make it legible and don't make it so small that it's difficult for the reviewers or the peer reviewers to go through. Another thing you're going to want to do is we suggest that you draft some of your responses that you plan to later enter into the web-based budget, the abstract, pre-award risk assessment, and other online forms into Word or another app. This helps to clean the information. You can clean the text before pasting directly into the text box in Just Grants. You can do this by pasting the information into something like Notepad and then copying the text from Notepad and pasting it into the text box that you'll see in Just Grants. And then the last tip for your application is for your file names. Make sure that file names for the attachments are descriptive, short, and unique, right? So Just Grants actually rejects attachments with names that are too long or that it recognizes from somewhere else within the application. It will actually pull up a red triangle. That's how you know it's rejected. So on the screen, we have some examples of file names that would be acceptable. You'll see they're short, they are descriptive, but they are unique. So if you have any questions about the program's eligibility, the requirements, allowable activities, application content, or application submission requirements, please email or join our weekly office hours for the program, and you can speak live with OVW staff. The contact information and instructions on how to join the office hours will be on the last slide in this presentation. Note that we're not able to help you write your application, but we are more than happy to and can answer technical questions, including whether or not specific activities are allowable under the grant program. And then finally, please give yourself plenty of time to complete the entirety of the application, especially if this is your first time submitting an application in Just Grants. If you experience issues with the submission, reach out to the Just Grants support desk for assistance. They're there for you, and their contact information will also be on the last slide. Okay, so let's walk through some of the actual components for the application. So there's the proposal abstract. The proposal abstract will not be scored, and formally, this was a separate attachment that was added to the application. Note that the abstract is entered into the text field in Just Grants. It does not have to be double spaced in the text field. The abstract is a summary of the proposed project, but what you don't want to do is summarize past accomplishments in this section. The proposal narrative is worth 80 points total, and this application component, again, is prepared as a PDF, a Word, or a text document, and then attached in Just Grants. So when preparing the document, again, use the headers and the section titles provided and page numbers. Make sure to respond to each item in the section it appears in, even if you feel like you've answered the same question elsewhere in the application. This is because reviewers will score each section independently and cannot use information found in one section to satisfy information required in another section. Please address each of the items listed. If something doesn't apply to you or you don't have the data requested, state that and provide an explanation. And then when discussing the purpose of the proposal and your community served, use local data and anecdotal evidence when available. The peer reviewers are subject matter experts and are very familiar with what the national statistics say about sexual assault in tribal communities. What they don't know is what is happening in your community. So tell your story. So now, a couple more things. Please keep the narrative to 15 pages maximum. Again, peer reviewers will not read past this page limit. 15 pages, and then they are done. No, you can use tables or charts if that is easier. It's acceptable, and if it's easier or clearer to present the information in that way, go ahead. Okay, so now we're going to walk through each piece of the proposal narrative for the standard projects. Okay, so the purpose of the proposal. The purpose of the proposal is worth 20 points, and this is where you're going to describe the problem of sexual assault in your community, the needs of victims, the services that exist, gaps in those services, and any efforts your community is currently engaged in. You want to paint the picture of the current state in regards to sexual assault. Talk about the tribal communities in the area to be served by the project, and please speak to a range of traditionally underserved populations. This includes individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing, individuals with disabilities, persons with limited English proficiency, older adults, and LGBTQ and Two-Spirit communities. Also, remember, as we discussed before, try to include the broad range of victims that this program does support, which includes victims of sex trafficking who have also experienced sexual assault, adults abused as children, male survivors, children and youth survivors, and adults sexually assaulted by a person other than an intimate partner, such as a stranger, neighbor, family member, maybe a coworker, community leader, or a clergy or spiritual leader. So, describe the current services and gaps for the targeted population. And then again, use relevant demographic data when you can. Use local statistics and anecdotal information. And if the local statistics are not available, explain that, but then try extrapolating from state or national statistics. The purpose of the proposal is also where you're going to describe your agency or your organization and the resources that it needs to successfully implement the project. Include any gaps in training or technical assistance that could help the program provide the services to sexual assault victims. And note, your responses here, they do not have to be long-winded. You can even use bulleted lists where it makes sense, but your responses should be thorough and they should be clear. And again, in this section, you are painting the picture of the current state of sexual assault in your community. It's the foundation of the proposal and it's the basis for the next section. So you want it to be solid. We have the next two on this slide. So we have the what will be done section, which is worth 45 points, and the who will implement section, which is worth 15 points. So under the what will be done section, this is the meat of the proposal. And note again, a table or chart format to present the goals and objectives and timeline, it is acceptable. And an example table is included in this solicitation. Note, your project goals and objectives should be directly related to the provision of direct intervention and related assistance for sexual assault victims. And again, the family and the household members of those victims, and anybody else collaterally affected by the victimization, except for the perpetrator. It's those areas that are outlined on page 5 of the solicitation, and they should link and relate to the gaps or needs identified back in the purpose of the proposal section. Please also include participation in an OVW training and technical assistance as an activity under one or more of your goals. The third section for your narrative will be the who will implement section. And this is where you demonstrate the capacity and expertise of your project staff and any of your partners. You should attach the job description for any positions that will be created by or paid for with grant funds if you have them available. And this includes regular, contract, and consultant positions. And then the job descriptions should be combined into one file and uploaded as a supporting attachment. Note that job descriptions or resumes, if you have them, they do not count towards the 15-page total for the project narrative. If you do not have them available, they will need to be submitted post-award if your application is submitted for funding. Now, for the ITRSA capacity building projects, the narrative is slightly different, right? Because this is perhaps for new programs, these are for capacity building projects for those applicants that have never received an award under TSASP, have a need in their communities, but maybe need assistance in developing a plan. So for this application, the entire what will be done section, it's only one section, it's the what will be done section, and it is worth 80 points. So under this, you will describe the service area. You will state whether the proposed project will establish new programming and or expand existing programming in the area. You will describe, if any, the services currently offered for victims of sexual assault in the service area and list any services that you would like to implement for victims with this project. The applicant will describe the safety needs of victims who will be served by this project and how it intends to address those needs. You will list the individuals who will serve as the project coordinator and their expertise in the area of sexual assault services. If a project coordinator is not known, that's okay, but describe the qualifications for the proposed position. And then lastly, you're going to want to identify and describe the role or roles of key individuals and or organizations, including project partners that you think may be involved in the proposed project. So now we're coming through, as part of the application component walkthrough, the budget and the budget narrative. And this is worth 20 points. So for both the standard and the ITRSA capacity building projects, the budget narrative is submitted as a web-based form in Just Grants. It is not a separate attachment, and you should not upload it as a separate budget document. The line item description, the cost calculations, and the narrative will be entered into the budget form in Just Grants. When entering the text into the budget narrative sections, you're going to need to either type directly into the budget narrative section or use that copy paste in Notepad that we talked about. So take your information, copy paste into Notepad, and then into Just Grants to clean the text of any formatting described earlier. So note that for this budget, standard projects can budget again up to $500,000, and this is for the entire 36-month period, not per year. The budget must include $35,000 in the travel category for OVW training and technical assistance. And that is $35,000 for the entire 36 months, not per year. For the ITRSA capacity building applicants, you can budget up to $525,000, again, for the 36-month period, and you must include $35,000 in the travel category for the OVW training and technical assistance. And again, that's $35,000 for the entire 36 months and not per year. So also note that when you are creating your budget, that your items should be clearly linked to one or more of your project goals, your objectives, or your activities. If they're not linked, you're going to get downgraded. They should be reasonable based on the resources needed to implement the project, and they should not include any unallowable costs. Please also include funds or describe other resources available to ensure accessibility for individuals with disabilities, deaf or hard of hearing individuals, and persons with limited English proficiency. Okay, so in this next section, in this next couple of slides, we're going to focus on the aspects of your application that relate to the documents that our financial team, GFMD, or the Grants Management Financial Division reviews. More specifically, we're going to go through some of the items that GFMD has identified from prior year applications that could help with expediting our review process. So we're going to highlight certain aspects of the data requested with the application survey and the pre-award risk assessment survey. And I'm going to provide you with a link to a detailed webinar on how to develop the budget that will be included in your application. So the first thing I want to talk about under this area and highlight is the data requested with application, or the DRA, which is a survey that all applicants have to complete in Just Grants. When you get into Just Grants, you're going to click on the survey name, and then you click on it to access and complete the survey in Just Grants. So in particular, under the DRA is the issue of the question regarding the single audit. So as part of the review, OVW requests that all applicants provide a statement as to whether or not they've expended $750,000 or more in federal funds during their last fiscal year. And if they have, then they're expected to indicate that and also to specify the end of the date of their last fiscal year. However, GFMD has been finding that applicants do not always include this information, and they leave out whether or not they've met this threshold, or they leave out the end date of the last fiscal year. Please ensure that this question is answered in its entirety on the DRA survey. It'll be the TSASP DRA survey, and it is question number 3. The next item that GFMD would like to highlight and discuss is the pre-award risk assessment survey, which assists them during their pre-award risk assessment review for all the applications. So as part of this, each applicant must prepare a response to all 11 questions, and each question has multiple parts. And what we've noticed from prior years is that applicants are not fully answering all the parts to the questions, which in turn requires GFMD to reach out to the applicant, and that can delay award recommendations. Some of the most common issues that we've encountered have been, for example, question number 2, where the applicant indicates that they do indeed have internal procedures, but then they don't provide a list of the topics covered in the policies and procedures. Another example of incomplete responses would be question 3, and that is where the applicant does not provide a summary of the organization's processes for tracking expenditures, and more specifically, whether or not it tracks budgeted versus actual expenditures. So those are a couple of examples, but basically, please make sure you read each piece of each question and provide a full and comprehensive response. Understandably, the individual that is best suited to provide the answers to these types of financial questions may not be the same person that's writing or submitting the grant application. So a list of the questions included in both the DRA and the pre-award risk assessment survey appears at the end of the solicitation under the correct heading. The survey questions on pages 23 to 26 of the solicitation. So one thing you could do is provide those questions in advance to the individual best suited to answer them so that they can prepare the responses in advance and then copy and paste them into Just Grants into the appropriate sections during the application submission. So that's one suggestion. So here on this slide, we have some resources that are available to help you create the budget to be submitted with the application. So over the last year, GFMD has worked to develop a detailed webinar presentation on how to assist the applicants, in developing your budgets to be submitted with your applications. They really wanted to help reduce any challenges that you may be facing with the budget and to make it clear what they are looking for when they review your budget. So this webinar, with the link on the slide, provides some insight as to what OVW financial staff considers during the review. Again, you can find the webinar at this link, or you can find it under the budget information section on the OVW resources for applicants page. Additionally, Just Grants has training on resources on how to complete the web-based budget over on their website. And I highly encourage you to review that information before you wade into entering the budget in Just Grants. Many applicants last year found they spent a great deal more time on entering the budget than they anticipated. Finally, additional financial resources that you might find helpful are the uniform guidance, which can be found at 2 CFR 200, the DOJ Financial Guide, and of course, this program solicitation. And all of the links are here for you. Lastly, we know that this is a lot of information to process. So if you have questions about the GFMD information discussed, please feel free to contact them. Contact the GFMD help desk. Their contact information is here, and it's on the last slide. Okay, let's take a look at the next application component, and that is the document demonstrating authority to apply. So, like some of the other attachments, the document demonstrating authority to apply is prepared as a Word, PDF, or text document and attached to the application in Just Grants. It's not scored. However, and this is so important, applications without this document will be removed from consideration prior to peer review. So note that for tribal consortiums, they must provide documentation of authority to apply from each member. And then tribal organizations and tribal nonprofits must provide a letter of support or letters of support from the tribe or tribes to be served. And letters of support must be signed and dated by the chief executive officer or authorized rep of the tribe, addressed whether the tribe is familiar with the types of services provided by the applicant and whether these services are available and provided to tribal members. Describe whether the tribe has previously worked with or partnered with the applicant organization, and if so, under what circumstances. And then clearly explain why the tribe supports the applicant's proposed project. And I'm going to say it again, it's so important. For tribal consortiums and tribal organizations and tribal nonprofits, applications without the document demonstrating authority to apply will not be considered for funding. Some additional components for the application include, and you can find sample templates for all of these, the letter of non-supplanting, the tables for the applicant disclosure and duplication and cost items, along with the forms to print and sign for the confidentiality notice on the OVW website. These are all under how to apply. Both the disclosure of lobbying activities and the DOJ standard assurances are pre-populated forms with Just Grants. So a little bit on how to apply. There is a section on in the solicitation that guides you through how to apply. And we ask that you please read this section of the solicitation carefully. It begins on page 17 of the solicitation. Again, we understand the FY 2022 process is new for some, and there are differences from how it used to be done in the past. So to best prepare for submitting a successful application or a successful proposal, it's important to plan ahead. Do not procrastinate until the last few days before the proposal is due. To prepare, review the training resources available on Just Grants, including viewing or participating in application submission webinars. And most important, most significant, reach out for assistance to the OVW Just Grant support desk early if you're experiencing issues. Applicants who are experiencing Just Grant technical issues should ensure that they are continuing to develop the proposal while working with the OVW Just Grant support desk to address those issues. And should there be difficulties, you must follow the solicitation guidance regarding technical difficulties. Be sure to keep documentation that you did follow the guidance. This will enable you to submit a full proposal by the deadline using an alternate method if necessary. OVW will take the necessary steps to ensure that applicants are able to submit their applications on time and will update our submission guidance as necessary as the due date nears. So, some additional steps, such as obtaining the DUNS, the Data Universal Number System number, or registering with SAM, the System for Award Management, or grants.gov. All of these can take several days or even a couple of weeks to complete. And unfortunately, there is no way to speed up these registration processes. Therefore, we recommend that you confirm your registrations are current or begin your registrations as soon as possible, but no later than the dates suggested in the solicitation. Okay. And on the slide, again, the beginning on page 17 is the section on how to apply. Page 19 is where you find information if you are experiencing technical difficulties. And then again, failure to begin the registration or application process in a timely manner is not an exception for which OVW can approve a late submission. This is our last slide. And it includes a lot of the deadlines and contact information for the TSAF solicitation. So finally, to reiterate, applications must be initiated in grants.gov no later than Tuesday, April 19 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the full application has got to be submitted in Just Grants no later than Thursday, April 21st at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. Applications that come in after that time will not be considered for funding. Also note that submitting the application components at least 48 hours before each deadline should ensure that you receive notice if the submission failed and provide you with an opportunity to correct the error before the deadline. So note those deadlines. If you have questions, programmatic questions after reviewing the solicitation in full, whether you're questions like whether your entity is eligible to apply or if a particular activity is allowable under this program, please email your questions to the ovw.tribal.sasp@usdoj.gov mailbox. You can also join our live office hours to speak directly to an OVW program specialist every Monday and Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And these office hours will be conducted from April 4th to April 18th while the solicitation is open. From your computer, you'll be able to just click the Join the Microsoft Teams meeting link on this slide, which will open your browser and take you to the meeting where you can join as a guest. Or you can call into the Teams meeting and use that phone number and conference ID number. If you have any financial questions, contact the OVW Grants Financial Management Division by emailing ovw.gfmd@usdoj.gov or call them at 888-514-8556. If you need technical assistance with grants.gov and you're working on the first stage of the application submission, please contact the grants.gov applicant support line by emailing support@grants.gov or calling the number on the slide, 800-518-4726. And then lastly, if you need technical assistance with Just Grants as you are submitting your package in the Just Grants system, please contact the OVW Just Grant Support Desk by emailing ovw.justgrantsupport@usdoj.gov, or you can reach them at 866-655-4482. So this concludes the FY 2022 Tribal Sexual Assault Services Program pre-application information session. Thank you.